Well, good deal. Well, Ryan, if you need to adjust me on the sound, just go ahead. You can probably bring it down a little bit. And that, welcome out, everybody. It's good to see everyone in the house. Turn to your neighbor and just wave at him. Tell him it's good to see him tonight. It's good to be here. And thanks for coming out and being a part of this course. We're really excited over the next 3 weeks after tonight to be able to do these. This course that we're going to do tonight, How to Create a Spiritual Growth Plan, will be tonight. And then next Wednesday, we'll kind of wrap it up. And then Pastor Chris is going to do the next two on Israel Illuminated. So we're really excited about it. We'll welcome all of our friends online. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, on our website, you're probably in your pajamas with some coffee and brownies and all of that. So it's good to see everybody. And thanks for tuning in. If you are tuning in online, and for those of you here, if you want a digital version of this workbook. So here live in the house, we've got a workbook. We're going to work through this. It's got fill in the blanks. At the end of tonight, you're actually going to fill out your growth plan. So that's going to be pretty exciting. If you want a digital version of this, so those of you watching online, those of you here in the house, if you just want a digital version of this on your own, if you go to johnbarrettblog.com/growth, so johnbarrettblog.com/growth, you will see the PDF of this workbook, and you can download that, and you can follow along if you're watching online and tune in with us tonight, or if you guys, again, want a digital version of this workbook that you want to kind of put on your computer or Kindle or iPad or something like that. So, again, johnbarrettblog.com/growth, and you can get that workbook. Next week it'll be the same, and then we'll have the workbook for next week. So let's dive in. I hope you guys are ready. I'm really excited about this. This is probably one of my most favorite topics to talk about, is growth and personal growth and growing our faith, growing ourselves, maximizing all that God has created us to be. So I'm passionate tonight, so get ready. In fact, the framework that I'm going to lay out to you, there's a 3D framework that it's taken me years to put this together. It's going to sound simple tonight. You're going to get it and be like, okay, that makes sense. But this is years and years of the making. In fact, let me take you back to my origin story today of where everything that we're going to talk about, why we're talking about this, the framework that we're going to use for you to create a growth plan. Where did this come from? This isn't just some, resource that floats out there. This is like homegrown stuff. And the origin story, where it sort of starts, is I got saved. I gave my life to Christ when I was in high school. Many of you know the story that are here. You've heard me kind of share some of these in bits and pieces. But my freshman year of high school, I went to a summer camp. A friend invited me. I figured there'd be a lot of cute girls there as a high school boy. And lo and behold, Jesus got a hold of my life and changed me. It was a powerful, powerful experience. And I just remember just being so called, so passionate about God my freshman year of high school. And not that I was a perfect kid. I did a lot of crazy, stupid stuff. But I always had a heart for the Lord and that. And so, I was growing, obviously, in my faith. I was part of my youth group and part of my local church and, just trying to make my way and figure out how to live for God and live life and navigate all that. And when I graduated, I got into ministry, and you got to remember, growing up, or you need to know this, like I didn't like school. I was not a studious person. I was a punk rocker kid, right? I was in a punk rock band and, just like to have fun and that. I remember when I would get grounded sometimes when I was young. It didn't happen real often, but when I did get grounded, my punishment would be to like read a book or something. Like it was that bad. That was such a punishment, was for me to read or something. My parents would be like, "You have to read this." No, anything but reading. Like no, and I didn't like just kind of devoting that time. I just wanted to do stuff. So you have to understand that you're talking about a 19, 20-year-old kid that didn't like to read, didn't like to do any of that, didn't like to study or whatever it was. So as I'm following Christ and I'm in ministry, I'll never forget, I went to this conference and one of my mentors was there, and he was talking about this book that impacted his life and going on and on about how it changed him and just, was kind of the catalyst for his faith and growth and all this stuff. And I just remember being so inspired by listening to him and thinking, well, I want that. I want my faith to explode and be like that, right? I want to grow and understand what God wants from me. And so he's talking about this book, and I remember I thought, I'm going to have to get this book, like I've never bought a book in my life. This doesn't make sense. So I went to a local Christian bookstore at the time, and this is the first time I've ever been in a bookstore, especially a Christian bookstore. And I remember walking around, I'm thinking, all right, where is this book? Where is this book? And I found the book. It was a big book at the time, and I bought it. And I took it home, and I kind of set it next to my bed, and good intentions, right? But I never got around to read it. I was like, I'd always make an excuse. Like, I'm too tired. Tomorrow I'll read it. Tomorrow I'll get to it. I probably should do that, but I just didn't do it. Well, then I kind of felt guilty. I thought, I bought this book, and, that was a lot of money for me as a 19, 20-year-old kid. And I thought, I'm going to go ahead and pick up the book. So I picked up the book. This was the book, The God Chasers by Tommy Tenney, that came out years and years and years ago. And I picked up the book, and I remember it was just, I was like, all right, I'll just start reading it. And I literally the first chapter, I just dove in and read, and I remember just like, what is going on? Like, I am learning so much about God and faith and what I need to do and what God is wanting me to do and how we need to seek him. And I just remember thinking, this is crazy, and I couldn't put it down. And again, remember, I don't read, right? Like I don't read, and I could not put the book down. And I read through that whole book probably within a few days, which is crazy. And I read through that, and I remember thinking, I don't even know what just happened. Like, I grew in my faith more in that one book in those 2 days than I probably had the previous 3 years of my life combined. I mean, it was like the fast track of God just downloading all kinds of revelation to me. So I was hooked. It was a book addict right there, right? It was like a drug in a good way of what God had. So I'm like, I need more. So I went back to the bookstore, and I'm like, I got to buy another book. And what do? Lo and behold, I pick up the second book. Now, God just directed me here, right? Like, who gets lucky their second time in that? And I picked up a John Bevere book called A Heart Ablaze. And it had just come out. I won't even give you the date, but it was a long time ago. But the book had just come out. I didn't know anything about it. Nobody ever said anything about this book. I just picked it up. I started to read it. Same exact thing. I mean, chapter after chapter. In fact, this is the book. This is my copy. And if you went through here, you'll see all kinds of highlights where I mark it up in here. And I remember I was floored. And something just ignited within me, where my faith and my just passion for who God was and understanding him and understanding the potential that was inside of me and the calling that was on my life and how do I navigate all this stuff and all of that, just it was like literally illumination, right? It was like, as the more I read, the more like I just clearly saw who God was and what he wanted for me to do. And that hooked me, guys. I mean, I could go on and on from there, but that, I was done. I mean, I thought, I am growing more in these books than I am of years and years and years of combining my life. And that what's kind of set me on a track of personal growth, to say, well, I want more, I want more, I want more. And I just began to lean in, listening for other people that were impacted by certain resources and saying, I want that, I need that. So I'd go out and I'd get that, and I'd grab a copy of that or whatever it was. And I just began to grow and grow and grow. Now, over time, I kind of said, I had a mentor that came to me and basically said, John, what is your growth plan? And I remember thinking, I don't know. I don't even know what that is. I don't even know I'm supposed to have one. Like, what does that mean? Like, I eat, I'm growing. Is that what it is? Like, no, what's your growth plan to grow yourself and in your personal growth plan? What's your plan? And I remember kind of like him hawing around it going, I read every now and then. I mean, I try to pray. I try to serve, and I'm kind of doing this. And he kind of looked, and he's like, you don't have a plan, John. You got a lot of stuff going on, but you don't have a plan to grow. You're not doing it intentionally. You're trying, but you don't have a plan. And that, phrase that I remember so long ago that I'm sure you've heard it, that if you plan, or if you fail to plan, you might as well plan to fail, right? You've heard that phrase. If you fail to plan, you might as well plan to fail. Because if you don't have a plan, then you're just kind of making it up. And so what I began to realize was if I wanted to get really intentional about my growth, which I already was, I was passionate, but if I want to kind of take it on the fast track, how can I put together a plan? So I began over the years and years of just kind of reading books and listening to things and talking and to other people and seeking things out. And so basically over the culmination of the last 25 years of my life is what we're going to talk about tonight, is everything that I've come to learn and kind of boiled it down to say, okay, this is the framework for a growth plan that I can help other people do. I follow everything that we're going to talk about here tonight to the T. Now, you know me, if you've been here, I got my little growth bag down there. We'll talk about it later, right, that I carry around with me all the time. And you're going to hear it all. Everything that I'm going to teach you tonight is not some theory. It's not some cute little idea. This is literally homegrown. I practice this to this day. This morning, I woke up and followed my growth plan. Yesterday morning, on Monday, I woke up and followed my growth plan. Tomorrow morning, on Thursday, I will wake up and follow my growth plan that I've laid out. So I'm going to share that with you tonight and give you this framework so that we can kind of rally behind this so that when you walk away from the day, you're going to have a plan. And it's not going to look like mine, but it's going to be a plan for you. Does that make sense? Are we ready? All right, let's dive in. I love it. All right, grab your workbook, open up. We're going to dive in. I've got a lot to share with you tonight, and I wish I could be here all night with you. You don't wish that, but I do, and just download as much as I can, but I'm going to try to condense it all in this time and be ready to go. So, again, if you're watching online, go to johnbarrettblog.com/growth, and you can get the digital version of this workbook so you can follow along. All right, James Allen, one of my favorite authors, As a Man Thinketh, a little short book about this big. In fact, I paid my daughters to read that book, and now they give it away as copies. We buy extra copies of that, and we just give it away to friends and all that. Simple little book, really, really short, but I love it. It was written a long time ago, but James Allen said this. He said, men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. Well, that's a profound statement, right? All of us want a good life. Right? I've never met somebody that says, you know, I hope I wake up today and things go terrible, things all fall apart, I lose my job, all my relationships are in disarray, and, you know, I have no finances and everything's crazy. Nobody does. If you do, we'll get you some help and we'll try to figure out what's going on. But all of us want great circumstances. We want a great life. The problem is not the desire of wanting really great circumstances. The problem is doing what it takes to grow ourselves to be ready for those circumstances, to really do the work to invest in our life so that we can be the best, so that we can be effective in what we do. That's really the problem. We're willing to improve circumstances, but we're not really willing to improve ourselves. 2 Peter says this. I love what Peter tells us. He says, therefore, dear friends, since you've been forewarned, be on your guard, so that you may not be carried away by the error of the lawless and fall from your secure position. But what? Grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Wow. Think about that. He said, basically Peter was saying, if you want to not fall away, if you want to be secure, if you want to be stable, if you want your faith to be grounded and to move forward in what God wants you to do, guess what you've got to do? What? Grow in the grace and the knowledge of our Lord. You got to grow. It doesn't just happen. It doesn't just come. You've got to grow. In fact, we can read in the scriptures, it says that Jesus grew in stature. Think about that. Jesus, even as a young boy, went to the temple and would sit under teaching all the time. In fact, you can read all about that. It talks about he grew in his stature. He grew in his wisdom and knowledge and all of that. So we have this model that we know that growth is absolutely vital. In your notes, here's what we've got to understand, though, about growth. Growth is not an automatic process. That's your fill in the blank. Growth is not an automatic process. Wouldn't it be great if we just got better over time? Like, that would be awesome. Like if tomorrow morning, on Thursday morning, I woke up and I was like 30 pounds lighter. That would be amazing. Healthier, stronger than ever before. Wouldn't that be great? But it's not. Growth is not automatic. You don't get better over time without intentional effort. That's a fact. Just think about it. I mean, this is the law of erosion. Everything in life operates from this law. Nothing gets better over time. It only erodes over time. Think about it. Our bodies, right? I mean, just the other day I was telling my wife, I'm like, oh no. And she said, what? And I was reading something and I said, it's blurry up close now. And if I take my glasses down, it's easier to read. And I'm like, oh no, I'm my dad. I'm going to turn into Phil Bear. And soon here, I'm going to be doing one of these. Right? And I'm like, what is going on, right? But as our bodies get older, they don't just get stronger and healthier without intentional effort. In fact, they break down, right? They get worse. Think about your car. Your car doesn't just run smoother over time. Well, the more mileage I put on it, the better it'll drive. No, it'll break down. It'll fall apart. Your house, wherever you live and that, things break down. The air conditioner breaks down. This breaks. You got to service it. I could go on and on. All the law of nature all operates from this, the law of erosion. Things break down without intentional effort. Your faith is no different. Without intentional effort to grow your faith and to invest your time and your energy and your focus into growing in the grace, the knowledge, the wisdom of God, it will not get better just over time. Just because you exist does not mean that you get better. It has to have intentional effort. So we have to understand growth is not automatic. Now, I say that, again, it sounds simple, but I meet a lot of people that are just hoping that they're going to be better in a few years from today. Well, I think I'll be financially better off in 2 years. Sure. Okay, well, what are you doing to secure that? Well, I'm just hoping it'll get better. Hopefully I'll, have a better job situation in a few years. Things will get better. Hopefully my relationships will be better with my kids or my spouse or family or that better over time. Well, again, nothing gets better over time on its own. So we have to understand it's not automatic. It requires an intense amount of effort from our part. In your notes, we don't go to our potential as though it's waiting for us somewhere. We grow to our potential by learning day by day. You don't go to your potential. You don't wake up tomorrow morning, like I said, and say, oh my gosh, I'm healthier, I'm stronger, I'm financially better off, my faith is stronger, relationships around me are better. My goodness, I'm living in the destiny that God called for me. How did that happen? Doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. We don't go to our destiny. We don't just wake up and kind of, arrive there like we're searching for it. Where is my destiny? Where is it at? If I just get the relationship, if I just get that finances secured, it'll be okay. If I can just get this over this hump, if we can just get through the drama here, if I can just get there, I'll be better off. No, your potential isn't anywhere out there. It only rests in one place. That's in here. That's it. Your potential rests inside of you, nowhere else. You can step into the greatest opportunity of your life, and if you're not ready for it on the inside, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You'll miss the opportunity. You won't make the most of it. Because opportunity in your destiny doesn't exist in some external thing. It's internal. You grow and you prepare and you become ready on the inside so that when circumstances begin to open up, you are ready for them because you've grown. You've prepared yourself. You're ready for it. You don't, dig the ditch when the rain starts coming and hope to collect all the water. You dig the ditch way before, so you got a big reservoir when it starts pouring down. Does that make sense? And so many people are waiting for an opportunity. It's like they're walking around just hoping that they stumble into some great thing. I don't know, maybe this will happen, it'll be great. And they're just kind of like just existing, like just trying to survive through life. And I'm going, well, you're never going to get anywhere with that kind of outlook because potential doesn't exist out there. It only exists within here. So the only way that you're going to fulfill everything that God designed for you is not to stumble upon it one day. It's to develop it on the inside. It's to apply yourself to be ready for it. And I believe that God honors that. In fact, I would argue that the reason that circumstances open up for you is because he sees a faithful heart that's prepared for it. Does that make sense? I mean, think about it. I mean, Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God and all these things will be added unto you. You grow yourself. You keep focused on developing yourself more and more. And he says everything else will come along when you do that. You seek me first and the opportunities will just come. And you'll think, how did I get here? How did this happen? And you'll be able to look back and say, gosh, it was because I've been preparing for this all along. God's been preparing for it for me the whole time. So we have to understand, we don't go to our destiny, we grow into it. That's why this is vital. In your notes, the R that we're going to talk about, the big R, here's what you've got to understand, and I believe this is how God designed it. is how you're going to grow. One of the biggest ways. We're going to talk about 2 other ways next week, by the way. We're going to unpack 3 things. Tonight we're going to do the R, and then we'll talk about the E and the P next week. But here's what it is, resources. You've got to surround yourself with resources to help you grow. You got to do it. You can't just grow out of your own kind of whatever, right? You've got to get help. And you've got to have resources to do this. Look at 2 Timothy 2:15. It says this, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. I love that. Timothy said, listen, you got to study to show yourself approved or worthy or ready for what God wants. Study the word of the Lord in that and what God is saying. That's how you begin to move forward and understand how to fulfill what God wants in your life. Now think about this. The word study in the Greek, spodeza, is what it is. That's the word that's used there. And here's what it means. To hasten or to make haste, so to be fast, and to exert oneself, an endeavor or give diligence to. So that word, study to show yourself approved, is literally not necessarily just sitting down and just, studying like, in that. It's literally an urgency, like something that's intense inside, diligent and intentional, to exert oneself, to give everything that you've got to work on this thing that you're doing. That's what the word is saying. So if we replace the word study, because study sounds very kind of passive sometimes, like you're just kind of sitting in a coffee shop, just kind of taking some things in or whatever. Let's just replace that word with work your tail off to show yourself approved unto God, right? Like we'll just translate that. Like give all diligence, make haste. Exert yourself and give everything you've got. That's what he's saying, to show yourself approved. So you've got to be intentional. You got to take this serious in what it is that you want to do. Now, think about this for a minute. Why resources? Why is it that we need resources? Think about this. God had a mechanism to communicate with us for all time, right? He left his word, the word of God, the Bible, the documents of the early church, of the Hebrew nation and the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, into the New Testament, the Christian Bible, of all the documents of Jesus. We have all these collections of that. And think about this. God could have used any medium to leave his words. What did he choose? The written format. A book. Bible. Right? The documents that we have. And I just, it's not a big deal. It's just, I think it's significant, right? I'm thinking, okay, if God left the word of God in the written form of a book of text, maybe there's some significance in there. Does that make sense? Maybe that there's something in there that's really powerful, right? And understanding that having resources that we can read in that, and it's not that you have to read it, but just taking other people's words, whether it's an audiobook or whatever it is, or you're watching a video or whatever it is, that you're consuming these resources of people communicating through a certain medium. So think about that. I just think that's significant. So here's the deal. In your notes, to understand how we learn, if we're going to study, if we're going to do what God wants us to do by being urgent, giving diligence, making haste, giving of ourselves to learn and to grow, we have to understand how God designed us. In your notes, to understand how we learn, we have to understand how God designed us, right? There is a specific way that God wired you and I. We didn't just evolve this way. God created us in a certain way with the capacity to learn. And this is significant, so hang with me, okay? I'm going to get into some science here a little bit about how we learn and how we're built and how we're designed, because it's significant to understand when we think about this idea of having a growth plan. So, in your notes, the brain is a cognitive library. So I want you to think about this. The brain is a cognitive library. I want you to think of your mind as literally a library. Like when you go into a library, right, there's hundreds and hundreds of bookshelves, and there's thousands of books and all there, right? And they're all categorized, and they're all, remember the Dewey Decimal System and all that? I don't even know if that exists anymore, right, in the digital age, right? But, they, like the whole system there of how it's all categorized, how it's all set up, it's very precise. There's a whole plan, there's a whole system to it. Your brain operates almost in that same sort of way, actually. Your brain is a cognitive library. It's how God designed it. Now, what's interesting is this. Dr. Thurman Fleet and Malcolm Maltz, they basically put together these ideas of studying kind of how the mind works and psychology and all these things. And what we've come to learn just through kind of understanding the body is this, is that your mind right up here, and there's actually this stick figure is actually a very famous stick figure, this simple little drawing. And it's, this is used in psychology, like literally the stick figure man is what they call it. And the reason the head is way bigger than the body, because the head controls everything that the body does, right? Neurologically, your brain, and that controls everything. And if you neurologically have problems, your body will have problems, right? So we have this whole, so this is significant. Even though it looks like a little elementary drawing, this is actually something that they teach that's very, very important. And the mind, if you will, is broken up into two areas. You have your conscious mind over here, and then you have your subconscious mind kind of down below is what we'll call it, or the separate part of it, okay? Now, this is not your brain. Your brain is, like just a muscle, so to speak, that's, functions and does things. When we talk about the mind, we're talking about the function of the brain. What does the brain do? How does it compute? Things that we can't necessarily see on a screen, but we understand how the mind sort of operates through studying and learning it. So when we think about the mind, there's two components, your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. Now, your subconscious mind is where the library is. So here's what happens. When you kind of pick up a signal, all of us have these kind of antennae, right, our senses, right, sight, smell, touch, hear, all those things. We have all these senses where we're picking up signals. So like right now, for example, I am over here, and I am speaking and talking to you guys, and my voice is going out in the sound system. And what is your conscious mind doing, right? You're hearing my sound, and this is coming into your mind, this thought, this idea. Tonight we're talking about growth. We're talking about the mind and all that. Here's what your mind does. As soon as a thought comes in and you dwell on it, you think about it, you don't just reject it and kick it away, but you actually just take a nanosecond to kind of contemplate that thought. Here's what happens. Your brain will immediately go down to your cognitive library in your mind, this subconscious level. And in your subconscious mind, there are hundreds, if not millions, actually, of bookshelves, like a library. All these bookshelves have different categories. So when you get that thought, your mind will subconsciously go and store that into said library, okay? So tonight you're thinking about faith and growing and all that. So you're going to be storing these thoughts into your faith library, if you will. And your mind is always filing these things over time. You're filing away every second, every experience, everything that you take in. Your subconscious mind is just filing it away in your library all the time. Now, you don't think about all of these things all at once. You'd go on overload. You'd shut down. You'd trip out. Right? Like our mind can only focus on one thing at a time, even though it can switch really quick. It focuses on one thing at a time, but it accesses these libraries to kind of make sense of things. And I'll give you a good example. I'll prove it to you in real time. I want you to think about Africa. Now, tell me what comes to mind. Just spit it out when I say think of Africa. What? Lions, giraffes, elephants, Sahara Desert, snakes. What else? Zebras. What else? Come on. The shape. Yeah, the Africa shape. Anybody think of Toto? All right. Anyway. All right. There we go. All right. All right, so we could go on and on. Now, here's what we just did. I'll prove it to you in real time, everything that we just did. Nobody was thinking about Africa 30 seconds ago, more than likely. Nobody had Africa on your mind. Nobody was. Unless you listen to Toto on the way in here, then you had Africa on your mind. Some of you are like, I don't even know what he's talking about. All right, just, go look up. So I said, think about Africa. What did you do? You heard my voice. You said, Africa, what comes to mind? You went to your African bookshelf, Whatever you filed over your whole life, and you started pulling books off. Zebras, giraffes, tigers, lions, bears, oh my. Right? You saw the shape of Africa because you learned that at some point. You've seen a map and all that. Right? Has anybody ever been to Africa in here? Have you? Did you think of things that you experienced when you were there? Probably so, right? Like you probably pictured maybe a hotel or a place you stayed or some food or friends or people that you met, whatever it is. We've got some friends that are from Africa, and when I think of Africa, I kind of think of them. They immediately pop in my mind. Why? Because all those experiences and all those things, my subconscious mind just been filing away. So now when you say think of Africa, I immediately go to my library, and you just started pulling off books that you've written over time. Now, when I say Disney, when you think of Disney, what comes to mind? Mickey Mouse. What else? What? Moana. Moana. All right, what else? Inside Out. What else? Castle. Yeah, you kind of see the castle. What else? Fireworks. What was that? Walt Disney. Yeah, you think of Walt Disney, right? Now, again, nobody was thinking about Disney 30 seconds ago at all, right? It wasn't in your conscious mind. I said think about Disney. What did you do? You went to your Disney library, and you started pulling off books off the shelf. Now, you know, what's funny is that years ago when our two daughters, when they were small, Zion and Allie, I think Zion was maybe around 6 or so. Allie was probably around 3 or something like that. And we were going to Disney World. And so we surprised them. We did the whole, we did this little, like, hangman thing that spelled, we're going to Disney World or something. And they had to, guess all the letters and all that. And so we got, they got done with it, and they read it. And they're like, Zion, who was 6 at the time, she could kind of get it, right? She's like, wait, we're going to Disney? She was doing the whole freaking out thing. Well, Allie, she didn't really know what Disney was. She was 3. She didn't have a lot of experience. So she was like, she's like, I don't know why Zion's getting excited. She just kind of started running around too, going, what? I don't know what's going on. And so we had to kind of tell her what Disney World was, right? We showed her some videos. This is where we're going. She's like, like the light bulbs are coming off. Now, what happened with that is this. Zion had a Disney library because she had learned some things. She had watched videos. She had done all that. Allie had no library for Disney. So when we said, we're going to Disney World, right? We said it, her conscious mind went, uh-huh. There's an empty shelf, right? Like, there's nothing in the bookshelf, right? I don't know what to get excited about. I don't know what it is. Because she hadn't learned. She hasn't grown. Now, I say that because of this. Let's take this a little bit further. This is the importance of growing and understanding in education and all of those things. Because the more you can fill your library up with the right things, the right thoughts, when opportunities come, you're able to access that. So when conflict happens in your life with somebody else, and you go, uh-oh, we got issues here, conflict happens, you experience this, that thought comes in your mind, guess what you're going to do? You're immediately going to try to pull off some library of information, and if you don't have a faith-based understanding of how to deal with conflict, how God wants us to respond, what it means to love others, what it means to communicate with others, how do we serve one another, if you don't have that, you don't know what to do. Right? You're like, I can't deal with this. I don't know. And all of a sudden, our experiences in life begin to crumble because we don't know how to deal with it. We don't know what to do. Or we've had all these bad experiences. So we've had bad experiences with conflict. We file that away. So then when we experience conflict, we go, oh, danger, don't ever do that again. Run away from that. That was a bad thing. That was bad. We pull these books off and we're like, never do that. And so we reject it and we run from it, and we don't know how to handle it correctly. And all of a sudden now we miss an opportunity, maybe a relationship gone wrong or something like that with your kids, your spouse, a coworker, whatever it is. Things are falling apart around you, not by God's design, but because we don't know what to do in the middle of the situation. Does that make sense? Because we don't have a reference. We've not grown. We have no library. We have no understanding. We're not growing in the grace and the knowledge and the wisdom of the Lord to understand how to deal with life. And so therefore, when we're confronted with it, we don't know what to do. Are we with me? Are we following along? This is why it's significant, because of this. Whatever happens in your subconscious library, when you access that thing, depending on if you know what to do or don't know what to do, if you're confident or not confident, depending on if you respond the right way, it affects all of your results in life. Here's why. Let me kind of prove it to you. Conflict happens. You go to your conflict library over here, and you go, okay, this is bad. I experienced this before. Run, danger. I mean, your fear goes, not your faith. Your fear starts to override you. And guess what happens? When you go to that cognitive library and you don't know what to do, that's when your body, literally, your mind will tell your body, danger, danger, and your body will begin to secrete cortisol, the stress hormone. You will literally have an overabundance of it. And literally your brain will tell your body, okay, danger, run. Cortisol goes on the rise. Your body begins to secrete that, with the neurochemicals. And guess what happens? You literally begin to shake. Your body will literally begin to shake. You'll begin to close in on yourself. In some cases, it may have such a high rise of cortisol that you begin to cry, you begin to shut down, you begin to break down. Your words get shaky and you can't talk. Are you with me? Anybody ever experienced some of these things, right? We've all been there. Like literally your body will have a response based on what happened up here. And then here's what happens. It's just saying that scenario. Stress goes up. You don't know what to do. You're fumbling around. You have no idea what to do. And guess what happens? There's a result that you get. Some sort of result. And you walk away from that and you go, okay, never do that again. Like that was so uncomfortable, so miserable, so horrible. And what we do is we get a result depending on what that result was. In this case, a bad one. And guess what it does? It just reinforces that. And we go, oh, file that away. Don't ever do that again. That's bad. So we have this fear wall that begins to get built within us. So whenever we experience, I'm just using conflict as an example. Whenever we experience conflict, we tend to repeat that process until we get rid of those books and put some new books on the shelf of how God says to deal with these things. Does that make sense? Are you with me? Now, in a good way, let's reverse this, right? Like conflict happens, right? You experience it. You go to that library, but in your library, you filed away what God has said about loving others, forgiving one another, not trying to make a reputation of yourself, but serving those around you. You have all these things. I could go on and on. All these things that God has been working with you on, that you've been growing and understanding of how to have good relationships around you, healthy relationships. And you've been growing in that. So now when that happens, still doesn't feel great, but when you go to that library, you're able to go, okay, I can do this. We got this. God's on my side. God will never leave me or forsake me no matter what the heck I'm going through. God is with me. God will give me strength because I know he can. Because his word says that in my weakness, he is made strong. And you begin to pull that off, and guess what happens actually? Your body doesn't release cortisol, the stress hormone. Guess what your body actually begins to release? More endorphins and more dopamine and more of like this feeling of, I got this. Confidence rises up. Instead of freaking out, we start going, we're calm. Hey, we can work through this. We got this. Your body will literally begin to open up. You'll literally be able to talk. You'll be able to just navigate through it. Your whole day isn't done and exploded. And all of a sudden, you get a better result around you in your relationships. And guess what happens? It just reinforces your learning. And you say, God is faithful. He'll come through. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And then you begin to store that away, and your learning just continues to build on itself, and your faith begins to grow. Are you with me? This is why this is significant. And I say this, I know it's a lot of science, it's a lot of deep kind of in here, but here's the thing. Most people are wondering why life is going crazy. Why are things out of control? Why are my relationships falling apart? Why do I not understand what's going on? Why is chaos here and chaos there? Why can't I seem to make it here? I can't get over this. I can't make it here. What's going on? And we just think that the universe is out to get me or whatever it is. And you go, no, you're not doing the work. Does that make sense? You're not doing what Timothy said. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, rose petals and peaches, right? Just because you're reading books or something and you're like, oh my gosh, I can take anything in life. I'm not saying it's going to be that easy, but here's what I do promise, not me, just God's word, that when you study to show yourself as one approved, you can rightly divide the word of truth. I promise you your results will change in life. That's a fact. And I don't say that out of theory. I say that out of experience in my own life. The reason that I'm in situations that I get in at times and the results that I'm able to get in life are a massive, massive origin story of what's happening up here. It's because of what I did this morning for about 45 minutes. It's what I did yesterday morning for about 35 minutes. It's what I did Monday morning. Are you with me? It's a result of those things. So how do you change your results in life? You start right in here, and you start growing yourself. Are you with me? This is what's on the line. That's how God designed us. God said, listen, I'm going to give you the capacity to learn, to grow, and to develop. And if you will apply yourself, I will give you wisdom and understanding so that you can experience the fullness of what I have for you. Are you with me? But we have to apply that. We have to understand what's going on. That's why it's so significant that we surround ourselves with resources. We're going to talk about those two other things next week, right? The E and the P we're going to talk about, but we're talking about the R today, which is resources. This is one way that we fill that cognitive library in your mind. Because here's the little equation underneath this little stick figure in your notes. Information, okay? So information coming in, you exposing yourself. Coming on Sunday morning, right, to a church that you're getting great teaching. Coming out here tonight, by the way, kudos to you guys for being the ones that show up and say, I want to learn, I want to grow. Like you're doing it. Like you're doing the work, right? Like I'm just proud of you guys. You are my people, all right? You are my people, right? You surround yourself with information. Information alone, though, doesn't do a whole lot because you have to then add education. And that's not just scholastics. Again, I was not an academic dude, okay? So I'm not saying education in the sense of go get a PhD. I just mean education meaning that you're working on learning something. You're wrestling with it. You're working through it. You're leaning in. You're asking questions. Why does it do that? Why do my relationships do that? Right? So you're educating yourself. So information plus that education plus application, right? We begin to apply the things that we're learning about and growing in. We actually are doing something with it. We're not just growing in knowledge. We're growing in our practice of it. So information plus education plus application equals transformation of our results. How do you transform your life that you're experiencing? Starts with information that turns to education, that you turn into application, and that turns into transformation. Does that make sense? We have to understand that. Now, what I want to do is give you the 3 Ds now to say, okay, John, I got it. You laid a lot of groundwork here of why growth is so important. It's not automatic. I've got to grow to my potential. I don't just go there. I understand that God designed us with the capacity to grow and to learn and how our mind works. God gave us that ability so that we could have the ability to transform our results, not because they just magically happen, but because we're doing the work to grow ourselves. It's what God called us to do. It's who He is. How do I do that? How do I get intentional? This goes back now to my origin story of, okay, I want to grow. How do I do this? And I began to learn and put together a framework, and it's the 3 Ds that we're going to unpack right here in your notes. The 3 Ds of creating a growth plan so that you can transform your results in life. How do we do it? There's 3 things you have to understand. The first one is this. You've got to determine. The second D is you've got to develop, which we'll unpack that. And then the third D is you got to do. So you determine, you develop, and you do. You determine what you're going to grow in. You develop a system to help you grow. And then you do the work that's necessary. So we're going to unpack those 3 things today. At the end, you've got a worksheet that you're actually going to fill out your 3D growth plan, okay? So let's dive in. Let's go. Are we ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? All right, I like it. All right. Sorry, I get excited about this, okay? First thing you got to do is determine, and the very first step is this, is you have to know in your notes why you want to grow. You have to know your why. And you know this to be true. Everything in life starts with why. You have to get your why. I've got a good friend who's a personal trainer, very successful. And I remember years ago, he talked to me and he said, John, when I work with clients, and he works with clients all over the nation, very, very successful, works with some A-list people. And he said, I can tell you in the first week, based on one exercise that we do, if they're going to be successful or not. And it doesn't matter if they're in shape, out of shape, doesn't matter what ethnicity, what social class they're in, doesn't matter. But what matters is one exercise that we do, and I can tell you if they're going to be successful or not. And I remember thinking, like jumping jacks? Does that show you if they're going to be successful? He said, no, it's not a physical exercise at all. We don't do anything physical in the first week. In fact, that's irrelevant. It doesn't even matter. He said there's one thing that I have them work on in the first week, and that is their why statement. Why they want to get healthy. And he said, I can tell you when I sit down with them, I give them about a week to do this, I can tell you that when I sit down with them, based on how meaningful that why is, when they tell me what their why statement is, I can tell you right there if they're going to be successful or not, if they're going to stick with it or not. I said, well, do tell, right? What's a good why statement? What's not a good one? How do you know? He said, well, usually you can tell with a why statement because as people begin to communicate it, you can feel it. You don't just hear it, you feel it. A lot of times they get emotional. Maybe it was a health crisis they had or a scare, and they're like, well, I got to make a change. Maybe it was their kids growing up, and they're like, whoa, hold on, time out, reality check, I want to be around. So they're like, I got to make some changes. Maybe they're just so miserable, just, not confident and just, been so unhappy with themselves. Whatever it is, right? He just said you can feel it. Doesn't matter what it is, but it has to be meaningful to them. Something that is just compelling to them, that helps them get over all the hurdles, because this stuff isn't easy, right? It's not easy to do the work. And he said, but the other ones that don't, he said, I can tell you, they're all short-term goals. Like, I got to get my beach body, ready for the summer. I got an event coming up. I need to lose a few pounds. It's like, what? It lasts for a few weeks, maybe a month or whatever, and then it's gone. They're just back to where they were. He said, you can just tell just on how meaningful that why is. Now, I share that because I think we've got to determine, why do you want to grow? You got to tap into that. If you don't have a why that is driving you, what? I don't have time for that. I don't have time for this. I'm busy. I got lots going on. That social media just takes my life over, right? I just watch TV all weekend, there's just other things to do. You have to have a why that drives you, compels you to go. Now, for me, my why statement, by the way, just to give you a little idea, mine is this. My purpose in life is to help other people find their purpose and live it out. That's just my why. My purpose in life is to help other people find their purpose and live it out. That's what I'm passionate about. It's what drives me. It's why I get excited about coming out here and talking and doing all that. I love it. I love every day of my life. I get to do what I love to do because I've created a life where I'm in that strength zone, in that gift zone, where I'm just saying, God, just use me, use me. And here's my view of life. When I get done with life, I want to squeeze every drop of life out of my body so that by the time I'm dead, there's nothing left. There's nothing. I did it all, said it all, went after it. Right? I followed the dream. I followed the calling. I didn't do it perfect. I'm sure I'll miss a lot of things and all that. I'm not a perfect person. I'm very, very far from it. But my view of life is that when I get done with life, I want to live full and die so empty it's unreal. Right? I want my tank to be on zero. I do not want to die with a half a tank left in the box, right? I don't want to die saying, man, there was all these dreams. There were all these things I wanted to do. I just never did it. Oh, let me get on social media and see what everybody else is doing. No, I want to live life. Now, don't get me going, right? But this is what drives me. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't do this stuff. I wouldn't do the work. I'd think about it. I'd be like, oh, that'd be cool one day to do that. That'd be awesome. Then I'd just go back to doing whatever. It drives me. And there's days I fail. I'm going to give you my growth plan. There's days, there's weeks that I'm like, I don't even do it. right? So I'm not perfect, right? But I want you to tap into your why. Now, we're not going to do that tonight, but I want you, because I want it to be meaningful, I want you to come up with a why statement for yourself. Why? And here's what I would encourage you to kind of do, is a to-so statement, okay? Meaning this, my why is to do this so that this happens. It's called the to-so statement. You know, me is, I don't craft it exactly that way, but it's my purpose in life, right, is to do all the work, to do everything necessary to, be all that God's called me to be. Why? So that I can help other people find their purpose and live it out. So I want to find my purpose and live it out so I can help other people. So it just says something to help you. I want to do what so that what takes place. So what is it that you want to do so that something happens? Does that make sense? That's a good why statement right there. To learn and grow and maximize my potential so that I die empty knowing that I've done everything that I can. Right? I'm making something up. But I just want you to think about, you don't have to follow a to-so statement. I'm just giving you something that kind of trigger your mind. But I want you to think about what is your why statement. And take your time on it. Nobody's going to grade you on it. We're not going to follow up with it. But I want you to think about it. And I want you to come up with a why statement that's meaningful to you. Not just, I came up with something. I really want you to think and pray and just say, God, what is my why statement that drives me to be all that you've called me to be every day? Why? To do this, maybe it's so that you can give back, be there for your kids, grandkids, those around you, whatever it is, have great relationships. I don't know. You fill in the blank. You got the point. I want you to think about your why statement. That's absolutely vital that you start there. So you got to determine your why, number one. Second thing that I want you to think about in determining this, once you've got that why that drives you, like for me, that's why I've got a pep in the step. That's what drives me on the days where I'm like, I'd rather stay in bed today. I'm like, nope, I got to get up and do the work because I know I've got a purpose. I know there's a reason to what I'm doing, okay? Now, if you're going to come up with a why statement, here's what I want to transition you into on this determine is this. You've got to determine the areas that you want to grow in. In fact, in your notes, here's what I say. You have to know yourself in order to grow yourself. What do I mean by that? You need to know what is it specifically about you that you want to grow in and that you need to grow in. You have to determine that. If I just said you got to have a growth plan, oh my gosh, where do you start? I mean, throw a dart at the board. I mean, you can go in any bookstore and there's, 3,000 books. You're like, I don't know. I just want to be good. Okay, that's great. That's pretty vague. So you've got to know yourself to grow yourself. What do I mean by that is this. You need to kind of say, what do I need to grow in order to maximize that why statement? What is it that I want to get better at? What is it that I need to improve? What is it that I want to go after in my life? What's significant to me? And that's going to look different for all of us because that has to be very much you. You've got to know yourself to grow yourself. And in your notes, I love this statement. You can't learn what you need to know until you know what you need to learn. You get that on the way home, okay? You can't learn what you need to know until you know what you need to learn. How are you ever going to learn what it is you need to know if you don't know what it is that you need to learn? And it's too vague to say, I just want to grow my faith. I just want to be better. I just want to be more successful. I just want to be better with this. You need to drill that down and say, God, what areas do I need to grow in? In fact, let me throw this out there, and this is just a brainstorming for you. You've got some blanks in there. What areas do you want to grow in? And I want you to boil it down into like a single word if you can. Or if you got to use a few words, that's okay. But give me a skill or a trait or a characteristic. I want to grow better in my communication. I want to grow better in understanding how to deal with conflict. So maybe the word is conflict. I want to grow in understanding how to honor God with my finances. So finances. I want to grow in understanding how to be a better mom, how to be a better dad, how to be a better wife, how to be a better husband, how to be a better family member, how to be a better grandparent, whatever it is. I mean, you name it. So whether it's a role, like the person that you want to become, or a skill, or a characteristic, Or maybe it's theology. Maybe it's I want to grow and understand about the grace of God. I want to grow in his grace. I tend to be very hard on myself, and I know that I need to understand and I need to get grace better in my life. I need a better understanding of that. So maybe it's something more theological. Maybe it's even historical in that. It's just a passion of yours. And maybe it serves a purpose in your life to say, I want to grow in this because I want to understand the intricacies of the Bible and the historical geography, how that ties together and why that's significant. So again, this doesn't have to be like, just all serving to this massive thing. It could be even just a desire that you have. And I believe that desire is there for a reason. That God wants you to grow in that. There's something there that he may use. Again, dig your ditch now so when the rains come, you're ready. You may be going, I'm not really sure why I'm studying about geography in the Bible at all. I mean, even though I'm just passionate about it. I promise you, I'm just telling you right now, if God's got you on that track, I promise you that one day you're going to go, that's why I was reading about that. And it may be a year from now, and you've experienced this in your life where you're like, I don't even know what this is about. And then one day in a conversation or someday, all of a sudden something opens up and you're like, oh, I was able to use that knowledge. I was able to use that. I was wondering what in the world I was doing back there doing this, and now I can see it. Because God just has a way of opening up an opportunity when you've dug the ditch. And he's like, oh, you're going to be faithful to do that? Let me just open an opportunity for you to use that. Right? And you've experienced it, you know it. He does it all the time. So don't overthink this, all right? Don't get deeply spiritual with it. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't have to be some deep theological kind of a thing. It could just be practical, right? How to be healthier and understanding that so that I can be all that God wants me to be. Right? Live a long life. Whatever it is, you fill in the blank. But I just want you to jot down some ideas. This isn't the 10 Commandments. You're not writing it down in stone. This isn't the final playbook. I just want you to jot down 3 or 4 ideas that come to your mind. Give it one word, a trait, a skill, an idea, a thought, a theology, whatever it is. Just write down some thoughts in there because that'll help serve you a little bit later. Does that make sense? So you've got to determine the areas that you want to grow in, and you've got to get specific on it. Now, you know that I've talked about this in the past. And one of the things that I did years ago, and again, this took me a long time. In fact, I think I just did a message on this not too long ago when I talked about growth and that. But what I did years ago, and this is just for me. I'm just giving you mine just so you have a reference. You don't need to do this. This took me a long time to get to, but this is me. This is how I'm wired. I like a lot of things going on. I like to be spinning a lot of plates, okay? I've got a lot of things happening in my life. I'm involved in a lot of things, okay? So for me, there were some, instead of kind of these ideas of maybe a skill or just a specific kind of characteristic, to me, they were topical for me. And this took me, it's going to sound simple, but it took me years to kind of boil this down into this. But there's 5 areas that I determined that I'm always going to grow in. And if it doesn't fall in one of these 5 areas, then I've got so much to do in these 5 areas that I can't waste my time over here on that. Even though it's good or whatever it is, it's not what God has put me to do. And so for me, there were 5 categories that I felt like God was really wanting me to go in. The first one was faith, right? It's a pretty generic one for me, right? But faith, anything that has to do with growing my faith and that specifically. So theologically, just understanding all that. The second one was psychology, as you obviously see, right? I believe that psychology, the way that God designed us, serves a massive purpose in my life. One, to understand myself and to help others understand them. So that's a huge area that I try to grow in. The third one is leadership. I'm a leadership coach. I do a lot of leadership business coaching all around, nationally, internationally. I work with clients all over. So leadership is a huge thing that I'm very, very passionate about. The fourth one is business. So I'm a business owner in that. I'm passionate about that. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs and all that. So, it's kind of ingrained in me. So, there's a business side of me that I'm very passionate about learning and feel like God has put in me. And then the fifth one is creativity or innovation. I can't land on the name. I always say innovation and creativity. I don't know how to I can't land on one. When I say innovation, I say, but I want it to be creative. And when I say creative, I say, I want the word innovation. So it's one of those. But that creative side of me is that. Now, those are 5 areas that I determined years ago. So every resource that I get, which I'll tell you my growth plan later in step 2, is I just surround myself with resources on those 5 different areas. I'm constantly growing on that every day, all the time. Reading, listening, surrounding by it, having conversations about it, meeting with mentors about each one of those areas. I got different mentors for each one of those things that I talk to people about and ask them questions about, which we'll talk about the next week and all that. But those are the 5 areas for me. Now, yours, that's a lot, right? Like you may be like, in fact, I would suggest you don't go that broad. I would actually say hone in on something. Now, for me, what I'll do sometimes is say, okay, for leadership, that's my category, but I'm going to really hone in over the next few months on conflict resolution, how to deal with other people and lead through that. So I may just go surround myself in that one topic. Does that make sense? So I just kind of drill down into there. Or like if it's faith, I sometimes will get on a kick about like I'm going to go back and read, everybody that's dead, basically. And what I mean by that is dead authors, right? Authors that, aren't around. It's not modern. It's, from long ago, but just read from their wisdom, right? I got that idea from a guy one time. He said, I don't read anybody unless they're dead. And I said, okay, that's interesting, right? You know that. But he said, well, all the dead people have all the best things to say. If it's still around after they're dead, it must be pretty good, right? So I thought that's pretty good. So I may drill down into that. But I would encourage you, get specific. In fact, if you're starting, I would just say get super specific. I don't care if it's one thing. Like I'm just going to grow in this one thing for the next 3 months. I'm just going to focus in on that. And I'm going to do everything to get everything I can to get that cognitive library around that thing. Does that make sense? So hone in and determine what it is that you want to grow in, okay? The next thing that you've got to do after you've determined your why statement so that you'll do the work, so that it drives you, there's a sense of purpose, there's a sense of urgency to it. You determine the areas that you want to grow in. You don't just say, I want to grow my faith. No, get specific about what you're going to do to grow that. You want to grow about prayer? Dive into that. I mean, go to town for the next few months and just say, God, teach me everything there is to know about prayer and how I can do it better and what I can do. Just rally around that concept. Does that make sense? And so pick that topic, whatever it looks like. Second D that you got to do is you've got to develop a system. If you don't have a system to do this, you can determine all kinds, I got this category is what I'm going to do. But if you don't have a system and you haven't developed something, then you're not going to know what to do to really maximize that. You've got to have a system. Again, if you fail to plan, you might as well plan to fail. So you have to have a system. In your notes, Proverbs 10:5 says this, he who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. You've got to gather the crops in the summer so that you're ready for the harvest. Don't miss it. Dig your ditch before it happens. What I want to encourage you to do in your notes here is this, collect resources. You need to be a resource collector. What do I mean by that? When you determine the areas that you want to grow in, you go out to town and get everything you can around that. Find the people, find the experiences, find the resources that you can do. We're going to talk about people and we're going to talk about experiences next week and how they serve into our growth. Tonight we're just talking about resources, but you got to collect. Right now, if you went and you said, John, how many books are you backed up? I was probably about 25 books backed up that I've already determined where I'm going, what I'm reading and all that. And I'm like, all right, they're there. And that's usually constant because I just go buy like 10 more, right? Once and so there's just a whole gamut of like archive of stuff waiting because I'm intentional and I'm pushing. So collect resources. I'm not saying you got to be that crazy, but collect resources. Surround yourself with everything you need to do. Now, in order to develop a system, you have to know your flow to grow, right? How do you grow? You got to get in the flow so you can grow. So you've got to know there's 3 things that are really important for you to create a system around what you're going to do with a growth plan. You got to systemize it, and this is your system. There's the 3 W's is what I call it here, kind of the Venn diagram that they'll, kind of throw up here. And it's basically this idea of the 3 kind of concentric circles here that come across. Right here in the middle is that sweet spot of flow and grow, and you are in the zone. But you got to have these 3 ingredients in your system. The first one is this. You need to know when to go. When to go and do your growth. You need to know the when. What do I mean by the when? In your notes here, you must schedule your growth time. You need to know when you are at your best to grow. This is very important. I wish we had time to unpack this all the way, right? The Greeks, ancient Greeks, had 2 words for time, right? They had chronos and kairos. Chronos is where we get the word chronological. Chronos, it just means sequential time. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2, 6 o'clock, rock on a rock around the clock tonight, right? Like it's just sequential. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's chronos. Within chronos, they had another word for time called kairos, which was the opportune time. The God time is what they kind of called it, where they talked about it's like this incredible moment where your energy is the highest, God is doing something. It's like a divine moment. And they called that kairos, meaning this opportune time. Now, what I think that we need to do when we think about our growth plan is this. You need to know when your kairos moments are. If you're going to maximize your growth, when are you in growth mode? Does that make sense? Now, I say that because there's a lot of people that go, I want to read more and I want to grow. And they crawl in bed about 11 o'clock and they go, oh. And you wake up because the phone hits you in the face or the book hits you in the face. Maybe it's just me. I don't know, right? And you're falling asleep. You're like, or maybe you read to go to bed, but you're like, before you know it, you're like, I just turned 3 pages and I don't even know what it said, right? Like, how did I read without reading, right? Have anybody ever experienced that? Where you're just like, I don't even know what happened. It's like I was transported 5 pages later. I don't even know how I got there, right? That's not your kairos time. Are you with me, right? Like, you're not going to extract everything that God wants for you in that moment. And if we're serious about surrounding ourselves to grow, we got to know when those kairos moments are. There is a moment where you're at your best. You might be a morning person. Right? All my morning people are like, yeah, come on. The other ones are like, oh. Right? You might be a morning. For me, I'm a morning person. I like to get up in the morning, get going, and read and jump in. That's when I'm at my best. I hit the, when the alarm goes off or I just get up, I'm up. Right? Like I don't forget snooze. Right? That's for the birds. Right? I mean, just get up, get going. Let's go. Right? Some of my people here are like, what? Yeah, that's just me. Right? That's not right or wrong. It's just me. So for me, those kairos moments is first thing I do, and everybody's kind of asleep, it's quiet and all that, sun's coming up, woo, love it, right? Like I just read, dive in, and go for it. It would be terrible for me to be reading at night before I go to bed, right? I wouldn't get anything out of that. No, that's me. You may be the total opposite. It doesn't matter. But you need to know when are you at your best. So you need to schedule your time. You can't just say, I want to grow, I'll just try to find some time tomorrow. I'll just try to find some time this week. You will never find time. Time is not there to be found. It's not there. You got to make it. You got to schedule it. You got to carve it out, prioritize it, and say, I'm going to grow. And this is when. This is sacred time that I'm doing. I don't care if it's on a lunch break. I don't care if whatever you got to do, get intentional. I don't care if you just got to do it you only got 10 minutes or whatever. You maximize those 10 minutes. Do whatever you can. Right, but you need to know when you're at your best. Stop trying to grow when you're falling asleep or when you're just not ready or you're not in the right mindset. You need to schedule it, save that precious time, and put it on your calendar, and you let everybody know, and it is the time that you grow. Are you with me? And you protect that time, and you do everything you can to know that. You got to know that time because it's not just Chronos. Just because you carve out an hour or 30 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is to grow doesn't mean you're bringing your best self to it. Are you with me? So don't think Chronos, think Kairos. When am I at my best? When am I going to schedule that where I'm full attentive, ready to go? And it works best for me. Second thing I want you to think about is know where to go. So this is when. The next one that we want to think about is where to go. Now, you say, John, what do you mean by that? In your notes, you must have a greenhouse for your growth. Got to have a greenhouse. What do I mean by that? Well, like any living thing, there are certain environments where it grows, and in certain environments where it does not, right? I learned this when I got a bonsai tree. I remember I was in elementary school, and we went to the state fair, and they were selling bonsai trees, and I was a huge fan of the Karate Kid. And I was like, what, Miyagi? Like, what? I could get a bonsai tree and be a karate master like Daniel LaRusso. And I remember I convinced my dad to get a bonsai tree, and we took it home. He said, now you got to take care of it. I'm going to trust you. I said, okay. And, man, I did not know this about bonsai trees. You have to water them and put them in sunlight. I did not know that as an elementary kid, right? Like, I did not have that in my library. I did not know that. So I killed that bonsai tree very quickly. And my dreams of being the Karate Kid died very quickly with it, okay? And I understood very quickly at a young age, like, there is environments that support growth, and there are environments that kill growth, right? So you got to think about, where do you do your growth? Now, sometimes you don't have an option. You just got to, take advantage of what you got. I get that. But I want you to be intentional about where you grow. Now, I could go back all throughout history. Go look at Einstein, look at Edison, look at all these inventors and all that. You know what one of the commonalities about all of them was? That they had a specific place where they thought and they would do their work. Einstein or Edison had a chair that he would sit in. He would claim that there was this thinking chair and that if he got in that thing, he could solve the world's problems. Like I could go down the list of highly, highly creative, successful people, and one commonality that you will find is they are very intentional about where they do what they do. Very intentional about where they work and where the environment that they're in. And we're all wired that way, right? A lot of us like aesthetics and we like certain things to be a certain way and all that. That's fine. Lean into that, right? Think about for you. Like for me, I love, oh man, when it's a Sunday day, like really nice out between 70 and 80, like right around now. Like I'm rearranging my schedule all the time because I'm like, ooh, I'm taking advantage of that. I'm going and sitting at a coffee shop. I'm sitting outside and I'm going to work because I will get a lot more work done on those kind of days because I come alive. I love it, right? Love sitting outside in the sun and around people. Oh, come on, right? Not talking to me, but just around them so I can work. And, it's great, right? But I just come in the zone. So sometimes I'll go to a park. I'll go outside somewhere and try to work outside. Right, if I can, and I can do that. For me, in my home, if I'm not able to leave, I've got a place at the home. There's a few different areas that I love to go. Right, on the couch, there's one specific area. I'm like, oh, yeah, I got my growth bag. It sits right over there on the couch, right next to it all the time because that's usually where I sit in the morning. Right, so I just want you to think about where you go. You got to have a greenhouse. There's some place. Listen, when I was single, when I was like 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, living on my own, this is so weird and all that, but I like to do laundry. Like, I like to do laundry. Like, I enjoy doing laundry. I don't like to fold it, but I like to do it. And I know it's weird. So anyway, I'm 19, 20 years old. I have to go to the laundromat, because I live in this apartment and all that. And I go to this laundromat. Oh, my gosh. I'm telling you, with the sound of, like, the laundry machines and the fans, like, on a hot day, I was like, I probably read 30 books in that laundromat. In fact, there would be time I didn't even have that much of a load, and I'd be like, I'm going to the laundromat. My friends would be like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just going to go read. Like, I love it. It was sick. It was weird, all right? But I would go, and I loved it. It was in Knoxville, Tennessee. I remember this one. I drove my kids by it years ago. I took them where I lived in Knoxville when I was single and all that, and I was driving around. I said, that's the laundromat that I would go to, and they knew the laundromat. They're like, that's the laundromat? I'm like, yeah. Looks a lot worse than it did back then. But anyway, it was cool back then, right? Now, that's weird, but that's just me. But you got to think about, where do you go? Where is a big deal? Create an environment that is conducive to you growing, and a place that you like. Go places that are going to open you up and be like you're in the zone. You're able to get in and learn and read and grow and all those kind of things. Don't just try to drudge through it at times. I know you can't control that all the time, but try to control it as much as you can. Does that make sense? I'm telling you, where is huge. When I coach a lot of business people, and I work with them on these 3 W's about when they're doing their work, and we will actually we'll find like 3 or 4 different places. I'll have them identify that they love to work, and I'll challenge them to go there and do that. So I want you to think about in your notes, write down just a few places. Maybe it's somewhere in your home. Maybe it's like, oh, I love going on the porch. I love getting a cup of coffee and going out here in the morning, or, oh, in the evening around here. Or I love being outside, or I love going here. I love doing this. Whatever it is. Right? I'm always on the outlook, by the way. This is another weird thing about me, right? Like, whenever I'm out and about and stuff, I'm always scoping out, like, I'm coming back here and I'm reading. Like, literally. Like, I've like, logged it in my mind. I'm like, I'm coming back. This environment was great. I was in a hotel lobby one time. I was traveling, and I was like, I got to come back to this lobby one day and work. I'm telling you, there is something about that lobby that is just the breeze. Oh, come on, somebody. It was great, right? I'm fanatical about it. So think about where's your greenhouse. Third thing I want you to think about is this. What? Remember, we need all these ingredients. When are you going to go do your growth time? You got to schedule it. Got to make sure you're in your Kairos moments. Where are you going to do it? Figure out where your greenhouses are. Create a greenhouse if you have to. Create a cool place in your house or a chair or a living room. Have fun with it. Make it comfortable. Make it yours. And then what are you going to do? This is a big one. When you do that, so you pick the when, you pick the where. Okay, what do I do when I get there? Right? Like, what am I going to do as I grow, as I learn in that? In your notes, you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. You must have a plan when you get to that spot. What are you going to do? You're going to listen to an audiobook. You're going to read a book. You're going to get on the internet, watch a course, do this. I don't care, whatever medium it is. I would encourage you to find resources that you can dive into and learn and grow. But you got to have a plan of what are you going to do when you get there. So for me, right, I'll give you mine. When? Typically, early in the morning, as soon as I wake up, that's my win. That's my kairos that I grow. Where do I go? I usually go to that couch area, or there's another area down in our other living room that we've got. There's a chair there that I really like, and I'll sit in there. I'll get a little blanket, put it on. I'm ready to go, right? I like it. It's a little environment that I've created. Or I'll go to a coffee shop or something like that and work. Now, what do I do when I get there? This is just for me. I'm going to give you an example just so that you can think about it, but you need to be specific about what you're going to do. What are you going to read? What are you going to watch? What are you going to listen to? Have that plan before you go in. Now, I'm going to give you something, and you heard me kind of share this. I'll do it really quick as a drive-by. For those of you that maybe weren't there, I don't know, months, maybe it was a year ago, I don't even know, but when I talked about growth and I kind of laid out my growth plan. So I told you I have my growth bag right here, right? This bag changes, but the contents do not, right? There's always books, but the bag will change from time to time. I have this thing for bags. I just like to change out bags every now and then and have fun with it. So I told you my 5 categories that I grow in: faith, psychology, leadership, business, and innovation, creativity, right? Those are the 5. I determined those are the 5. So what's my system? You got to develop a system, John. What's yours? This is for me. It might overwhelm you. This is just the way that I'm wired. Don't get caught up in what I do. Just use it as a reference. For me, what I do is this. I pick 5 books a month that fall into each category. I pick a faith-based book, a psychology book, I pick a leadership book, I pick a business book, and I pick a innovation, creativity kind of a book. Those are the 5. I will pick 5 books at the beginning of the month, every month. And I will find my 5. I've already got them backed up, remember, because I'm like 25 books out, so I've already got my faith one and all that for the next, 4 months probably. And I got them all lined up. And this is me. This is what I do. It always freaks people out when I tell them this, right? I told you I like to have a lot going on. I'm a multi kind of person, all that stuff. So what I do is this, and it drives me. I love it because I don't get caught in a rep. On Monday is my faith day. Tuesday, psychology. Wednesday's leadership. Thursday's business. Friday's innovation, creativity. The weekends are just catch up if I missed it or I had just a weird schedule or whatever it was. So the weekends are just catch up to get caught up. What I do with those 5 books at the beginning of every month, for example, I'll give you the books that I've got this month. I got to put them in order because they're all out of order here. Okay. So these are my 5 books for the month. I have Wayne Dyer, which I don't recommend, by the way, but side note, just by the way. I will read a lot of faith. Sometimes I will do a faith-based book every now and then, just side note, on a different belief or different religion, because I want to understand how to combat that with Christianity and why God's way makes sense. So I've read actually very atheistic books, Dawkins and things like that, just on my faith-based book, because I'm trying to prep myself if I'm ever in contact with someone who is a massive Dawkins fan who is an atheist. I've actually got something to say to them, right? I can actually carry an argument. So I'm not reading that to be an atheist, obviously, right? But I'm learning about that so that I can grow in my faith. Does that make sense? So this is kind of like one of those books a little bit. But anyway, this book, the Next Conversation, that's not my psychology book. The Shift is my psychology book, Managing Your Emotions, all that stuff. Anyway, you get the point. My leadership book is The Next Conversation. My business book is .com Secrets right there. And then Who Not How is, I kind of tied that into my innovation, creativity of working with people and whatnot. Anyway, that's me. So what I'll do is at the beginning of the month, is I'll lay out these 5 books, and I'll take the 4 weeks of the month, right? So usually there's 4 weeks in a month. Whenever there's 5, thank you, Jesus, I got more time. Okay. And I'll take those weeks, and if you'll see in each one of my books, I dog-ear exactly 4 different sections for the 4 weeks that I know what I need to read on Monday or, for that book, for that category. Does that make sense? So this one has 4 sections. You'll see it dog-eared right there. These 4 sections were the 4 in this month, so I am right here, actually. Here's my note, which I'll tell you about in a minute. On Monday, I read this. Monday was faith for me, so I read up to here on Monday. I know where my mark is. I have a system. I have a plan, and I mark that, and I know exactly where I need to be next Monday. Does that make sense? Are you with me? Now, today, I read, where are we at? Next Conversation. So today, this morning, I read my first section in here, right? So these are all dog-eared as well, as you can see. And I read my first section in there. So if you pick small books, it's a lot easier, by the way, right? You don't have to read as much. But sometimes I pick really thick books like that .com one over there, right? All right, I got to push myself. So I will go through and I will read that. So you get the point, right? Next Wednesday on my leadership day, I'll read the next section. Now, that's my system. Again, do not get over somebody. I'm a fanatic, right? Like I read like crazy, right? I mean, this is part of, one, I'm a communicator. It's what I do, okay? So you don't have to do that. I'm not saying you have to do anything near it. But you got to have a system, right? I have a little thing that I do in each one of my books, by the way, is I have this little trifold that I just make. I just print it out and make it. And I take my notes from everything I read. I highlight what I read, things that stuck out, and then I'll file it away in this little thing that I have right here. Like that was today, some notes that I had here. The fastest way to lose your peace of mind is to give someone yours. I was like, that's a good statement, right? When we kind of get out of control and all that. When you go into a conversation, always come in with the attitude of you have something to learn, not something to prove. And I thought, that's a good statement, right? Sometimes we can go in trying to prove rather than just trying to learn, right? And listen to understand. So anyway, right, these are my notes that I put. At the end of the month when I get all this side note, again, I'm fanatical. This is what I do, right? I'm intentional. I want to squeeze every ounce out, right? You may not be as that, but I do. And what I'll do is at the end, however much notes I have, I'll go file that away in my digital notebook that I use. So right now, if you went, and I categorize this, by the way, if you said, go talk about communication, I probably got in my computer system of Notion, I don't know, 100 pages and quotes and all that of everything you could ever think about, the best of the best about communication. You go take conflict resolution. I've got probably 100 pages on everything that I've come across in 20 years so far at least of the best of the best of the best of the best that I'm learning, growing through, trying to learn and teach on. Does that make sense? So I'm just building an archive. One day I'm going to sell it for $1 billion right before I die, right? I'm going to sell it to some communicator and say, I've got 50, 75 years of the best over here. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But anyway, so that's me. That's my system. So when you say, John, when you go to the when and you do the what? Or when you go to the when and the where, what do you do? I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the section that I've got laid out, and I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to mark it down and all this. I have a system. Now, mine's super in-depth. Right? Taken me years to do that. I didn't start there, right? I started with one book. I'm like, if I can get through one book every few months, that's amazing, right? But so I just started there. But I've grown in my ability to do it and my intensity to do it. Does that make sense? And so I've grown that stamina now and the desire and the discipline and all that. So now, it's kind of like somebody who runs a marathon. You're like, how the heck do you wake up and go run, 22 whatever, some miles? It's like, well, people didn't start there. Just wake up and go, I'm going to go run 22 miles, right? Like they trained. I mean, they just started running a mile and then maybe they got to 2 and you get the point, right? I just started with one thing. Again, I read that one book, God Chasers, right back then. I thought I was the end of the world, right? I was like, I thought that'd be the only book I ever read in my life. And lo and behold, here's where I am today. Does that make sense? Because I've grown. Okay, you get the point. So you got to understand these 3 things. When, where, and what are you going to do? Come up with a system. I don't care what it is. Just have a system. Something specific so that when you sit down and read, you know what you're trying to accomplish. Does that make sense? Third thing is this. We're going to fly through this last one because it's pretty basic, pretty simple. And then I'm going to give you a little challenge here on the growth plan. You got to do something with what you're learning about, all right? James 1:22. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says, right? We're not spending all this time just to grow in knowledge and that. We're growing so that we can do something with it. Does that make sense? There is a purpose. I don't just read all this stuff just so that I'm, full of useless knowledge or something like that. It's because I'm trying to utilize it to grow, to learn how to be better, how to transform my results as we talked about, right? And help others transform their results. That's why I'm very, very passionate about reading and devoting my life to this. In your notes, the more you apply what you've learned, the more God will apply to your learning. Listen to that. The more you apply what you've learned, the more God will apply to your learning. God will honor the investment that you make. Does that make sense? It says, draw close to God and he will what? Draw close and near to you. There's a reciprocation effect that happens when we apply what we're learning. God begins to apply more to our learning. Does that make sense? He gives us even more. When you're faithful with a little, he just keeps coming after for more. So when you're faithful to apply what you're learning, you're not just doing this arbitrarily. You're applying what you're learning. God will begin to just give more opportunity. And he'll apply to your learning. He'll give you circumstances, opportunities. As I said earlier, you'll be reading about something. You'll go, I don't know. And then 3 days later or 3 months later or 3 years later, you'll have an opportunity that God opened up. And you'll go, that's why I was doing all that. Does that make sense? That's just the way that God works. So we got to understand three ways that you can do, right? So how do I do something with what I'm learning? Well, just three thoughts, not limited to, but just three quick ideas. It's this, simple as this. Write it down. Write what you learn. Now, this is just psychology 101, right? The retention, when you write something down after you've learned something and you just put it into your own words and write it down somehow, some way, whether you're copying it or you're just interpreting it and writing it down, the retention goes through the roof of what you retain. So for me, the reason I write it down, one is to file it away so I have access to it later if I ever need to come back to it. But even maybe more than that is really just for me to emblazon it on my head. Does that make sense? It's like if I could just write it out. I can remember what I wrote down about the book, about the conversation book that I read this morning. Right? I can remember that, right? Don't get, you give away your peace of mind just because you're trying to, give your peace of mind to somebody else. Right? Like you've got to understand like these things. And so as I write them down, I can remember them. I can recall them. So I just encourage you, write down somehow, some way, whether you're going to journal it, maybe you just write it down, maybe just mark it down in your book. It doesn't matter how you do it. That's up to you. But I just want you to think about doing something with those things that stick out. Write it out. Do something with it so that it helps you to kind of get it. Does that make sense? There's this powerful psychology in there. Second thing is this, practice what you learn. Right? So think about what you're learning about and say, okay, well, how can I turn this into something I'm going to practice over the next week or weeks or whatever it is. So turn the things that you're learning about into things that you can practice. Challenge yourself. Give yourself a challenge. Oh, like that thing about that whole idea of going into a conversation to just learn and understand rather than trying to prove something. Right? Like that's something I'm kind of going, ooh, I can work on that in my personal life. Right? Like that's pretty good wisdom. Right? So I'm like, okay, let me work on that. Like how can I, and I'm going to be kind of thinking about that, right, over the next few weeks probably, and just like, how am I doing with that? Right? So practice these things. Turn it into action. Third thing I want you to think about is share what you learn. Share what you learn. They call this the protege effect. They actually say, in fact, by the way, if you're a firstborn, any firstborns in the house here today? All right. They have proven that firstborns have more retention of things that they learned growing up, and that because of this, if you have siblings, because of the protege effect, the teaching effect is what they call it. Typically, the firstborn, right, you're helping out with the other siblings, right, that are younger than you. And so your ability to kind of retain and learn things that you learned growing up stick a lot more, right? Now, this isn't true all the time, but there's a lot of times, like if you're a lot of firstborns, you'll hear them say, like, yeah, I had them mature real quick. Right? Like I was thrown into a lot of environments where I was taking care of another sibling and doing that, right? And so, there's just a powerful effect there. Now, all that to say that when you share something, it helps you retain it and it helps you to not only get what you need and like solidify it, but you get to help somebody else because you're sharing those things. I see a lot of people that are learning and growing, but they're not sharing that with other people. And I don't just mean like a spouse or significant other, although that's fine. But I'm saying like share it around, right? I mean, get people around you, get in groups. And that's why small groups and home groups and different things like that is good. Because you can share some of those things that you're learning about. So not only is it helping you, but you're helping others. Does that make sense? Don't hold that to yourself. So share that with other people. That's huge, okay? Now, last thing real quick, and we're going to end and finish up. My growth plan, all right? So here's what I want you to do. You don't have to fill this out tonight because I want you to think about this. Hopefully you've got some notes when we talked about when and where. Maybe you jotted some things down, or maybe the categories. Maybe you wrote some things down. This or something like it, you can go get the digital version. Again, I'll give you that website here in a minute. You can get the digital version where you can print this out or just make your own or whatever. But here's just a little template, right, where you're going to put your growth plan. You're going to create this for yourself, whatever that looks like. Okay, doesn't matter. Don't get hung up on mine. Mine is just an example of what I do. It doesn't fit everybody else, right? But it does me. So what you're going to do is put my why. What's your why statement? That's the first thing that we talked about. This is why I want to grow. So I want you to think about what that why statement is. Second thing is determine, I want to grow in these areas. This is where and this isn't for life. Now, my categories are for life, like unless they change one day, but they've been like that for probably, 15 some years now. Right? Like they probably won't change. But yours might be seasonal, right? It might be like I want to learn about prayer and I want to dive into that for the next 2 months as my goal. right? Got it. And then maybe that changes. That's fine. Don't get hung up on, all that. That can be a kind of seasonal thing, but just reset. Know when you're going to reset and say, okay, here's another area I want to grow in for the next few months or for the next whatever it is, weeks, whatever. I don't care. Maybe it's for life. Maybe you're like, these are the categories. I like that, John. I'm going to come up with categories just overall. It doesn't matter. But you got to determine the areas that you want to grow in. Does that make sense? Whether it's seasonal and there's an end to it or it's just ongoing. That's up to you. Second thing that you kind of, or the third thing in there is develop. My best times to learn are, and there's just some things there to say, here's probably my best times. If I were to schedule in growth and be intentional, this is when I think I would be at my best. Same thing with best places to learn are. Where's your greenhouse, right? For me, it would be laundromat, right? And it would be, living room couch and, a coffee shop, right? I don't go to the laundromat anymore, but, I would go back to that one in Knoxville, but it's weird now. So where your best places are, just think about that. Think about for you what that looks like. If you don't have one, create one. Figure out something that you can do, right? I know a lot of people that literally have done this, and I've taught this with, tons and tons of people over the years. And I've had people that literally turn their, shed and stuff or their garage or all that into, a learning area where they've literally just kind of made it their own. And that, so, have fun with it, right? If you have the ability to do that in a room or somewhere in the house, get creative with it. Invest into that. Make it an oasis that you can go and just enjoy and really, just come alive in and that, okay? My plan to learn is, this is where you're going to get a little more specific. So for me, it would be 5 books a month, dog ear them. Here's what I got to read each week. You get the point. For you, it may be different. Right? Maybe it's just my goal is to read for 20 minutes every day. My goal is to read for an hour a week, and I'll just try to break it up somehow. Again, it doesn't matter how much, how little, and all that. Don't get hung up on that, but get a plan. Does that make sense? So figure out what you're going to do when you sit down. What does that look like for you? What does that process look like? And then in the last one, the do. How are you going to write it down? Just think about am I going to journal it? Am I just going to make highlights? What are some things that I could do? Think about how you're going to live out what you learn about. What am I going to do to put that into practice? How can I challenge myself? And the third one there is, who are you going to share it with? That's where I want you to think about maybe 2 or 3 different people in your life that you can say, you know what, I'm just going to kind of commit to always, when I get around them, share some things that I'm learning about, right? And when I'm in those environments, I'll do that. Does that make sense? This is your growth plan, okay? If you'll put this together and just start working on that, listen, you go, John, man, that is intense. I don't know if I'll ever get there. Listen, I don't even hit this all the time, right? There are days, I told you, there are weeks that I go by where if I'm traveling, I'm doing a lot of other things, I'm like, man, I was way off my game, right? Do I beat myself up about it? Nope. But do I know right where I need to get back to? Yep. And I just start back up the next week, and I get going, right? I'd rather have a plan and miss it than have no idea what I'm doing and not even know if I missed it. Does that make sense? I'd rather do that. So I'm not perfect on this. I don't hit it all the time. I told you my weekends, if we're catch up, there's a lot of times on Sunday I'm trying to cram things in because I'm like, oh, I'm way behind, right? I did not get Monday in. I slept in because I was tired, right? And I didn't get up, right? And so, again, don't get hung up on beating yourself up, but get a plan so that you can maximize your growth, so that you can transform your results. Is that helpful? All right, you guys are incredible. Listen, next week, what we're going to do is typically I do 3 sessions on this. We do the resources. We'll talk about experiences and people. We're going to talk about how those play into our growth. I'm going to give you kind of a framework for those, for each one. We're going to combine those next week. So we're going to talk about both of those. We're going to kind of cram it into one. So next week, we're going to talk about 2 other elements in your growth plan. This was the resource one. I'm going to give you the experiences, how we leverage those. And then we're going to talk about people, how we leverage people around us in our growth plan. And I'm going to give you kind of a whole thing so that by the time you're done, you're going to have a growth plan on each one of these areas that kind of all comes together. Does that make sense? So I would encourage you to come back next Wednesday. Those of you tuning in online, thanks for hanging out with us. You can go back. You can watch this on our YouTube, Facebook, and all that. You can go. It's since we went live, it'll be up there forever. So you can go back and rewatch this. If you want the digital version, again, just real quick, johnbarrettblog.com/growth. Real simple. John Barrett Blog. That's my blog. I blog every Monday morning. I come out with new content. It's all free. You can go there and subscribe to it. There's all kinds of free resources and all that. But johnbarrettblog.com/growth, and that'll take you to the digital version of this where you can download that and have copies of it and all that. Is that cool? All right, you guys, thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks for tuning in online. And hopefully we'll see you guys here on Sunday morning at church and next Wednesday night right here. Thank you guys so much. You're awesome. If you want to come up and look at my books and my bag right here, you can. Oh, I didn't even tell you guys this. Sorry, I left the best part out. Jeez. This is the bonus round. I do read my Bible every now and then, so jeez. Did we already go on the stream live? I do have a plan for my Bible, so I will go through a book of the Bible, and I'll read that, and I journal that in my notes. It's a little different than my plan, that I do with that. This one is a little bit more organic. I kind of open up the Bible randomly and just kind of read through it, and that a lot of times is fragmented, just kind of picking out things. But I will go through books of the Bible and do that. I don't do it as much of a plan like, okay, on this day I'm going to read this much of the Bible. It's more of what I would call just kind of ongoing, where I'm always cracking it open. So, geez, how did I forget that? You guys are like, spiritual growth plan. You didn't even talk about the Bible, man. But anyway, my faith and those things, I get a lot of Bible time in there. So anyway, that's what I do on this. So you guys can, if you got any questions, come grab me or whatever, and I'll be happy to answer. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.